back to One Step Further. This is Justin Arnold. Today we have Nate on to talk about finances during Corona, during COVID, during quarantine, and some of the things that you guys might be able to do to make smart financial choices. And so Nate, why don't you introduce yourself, tell us a little bit about yourself, who you are, where you're from, all that good stuff.
Yeah. I'll give you just a little bit of background. I'll try not to make it too lengthy, but Nate Hasto with Hasto and Associates and PFS Investments. I've been working in this field, in my own business for 4.5 years now. And I think that I want to just give people a little bit of background here, because I think one of the things that I'm super passionate about is people finding their purpose. And I'd be the first to tell you that working in finance was never something that I even really considered. It was not, I would call it, what wasn't a natural math anyways, wasn't a natural skill set for me. Finding myself here is just kind of awe-inspiring just to me when I look back at how I got here.
So like Einstein, like math wasn't his thing. Look what he did. So not calling him Einstein.
I'm not going to put myself in that category, but I know how to use my tools. So, but yeah, I think it's one of those things where if you find passion in something, I think you should go find a way to, grow that, find a way to help more people with it, because there's a reason that you're passionate about it. And I think you'll always work harder and do more at something that you're passionate at versus something you can just make a little bit of money doing. So, I think that, so I've been doing it 4.5 years, and really the whole focus of our company is to empower people. I found out kind of the hard way years ago that there are a lot of financial professionals out there that are really kind of just here because there's quite a bit of money to be made in the finance sector. And I had an advisor who I worked with personally 6.5, 7 years ago. And long story short, I was looking for a coach. I was looking for a mentor. I was looking for someone who could help me make wise decisions with my money, and found out that I just basically found a salesperson who wanted to sell 2 or 3 things that made them a lot of money, and then kind of dropped me. So it was kind of a rude awakening, but it really inspired me to learn more about what this industry was really about. And ultimately, I found out that so many of these companies are just pushing products, and there wasn't really as much of a focus as I believe there should be on helping people actually create plans and understand this whole world of money. I think we always use this analogy. I think you can probably appreciate this, because I know I've done I've done some workouts with you, and you're sitting there on the other side of the screen, probably like, Nate has no coordination. He doesn't know how his feet work. I'm surprised he doesn't fall over when he's walking places. But realistically, it's something that I need to learn. It's a coordination thing. It's not something I can't learn. I know I can learn it. And, thankfully with a solid coach, you can learn anything. But
yeah. And not to start you up there, but I think it's interesting. Like we are taught so much, the basics, the math, the science, and but finances, how to budget. I'll tie this in a little bit to parenting, but I don't want to go off topic. But it's just like, we're not really taught how to parent or be a husband or wife, or all these different things that even God calls us. Like, he calls us to be financially responsible. He calls us to be, these things. And it's like probably the most, we have to go through all these tests to take a driver's test. But again, all these things that are probably way more important. So it's just interesting that you said all that. So and then passion is key. Like, makes you feel like, I love that you touched on that. And it shows you too, for people that are listening, like, somebody be passionate about that. I'm like, yes, people can be passionate about that. So think about what you're passionate about. And just like, I'm passionate about this. And I started this podcast for that same reason. If we could I'm passionate about helping people out, even if it's just one step further, one little thing in their life. That's why Nate's on here to talk about that today, from the financial aspect of things. So.
Yeah. So to kind of piggyback off of what you were saying, hey, when it comes down to, how to parent and that kind of stuff, you're right. There's not like in the normal education system anyways, there's no parenting 101. The same way that in so many cases, there's no personal finance 101. I think it's scary because, I'll take a sport, for instance. I know nothing, for instance, about rugby. besides the fact that it looks like a soccer ball and a football kind of got together and there's some kind of sport that evolved from there. So you could put me on
really hurt with no pads.
No, I have no idea what to do besides try not to die, which, probably I wouldn't do well either. But that's fine because I don't have to play rugby. I can choose not to be on the rugby field. But I think the scariest part to me is when you think about personal finance, we all don't really have a choice there. We've got to use money. It's the system that this world uses, and we just aren't taught how to use it. So, I think that's where our passion really evolved from. I made the mistakes that I made, in my own personal financial stuff early on because I didn't know any different. Had I known what I know now, I would have made different choices. So, that's really why our focus really has been heavily on education and empowerment. We really believe that and a fully informed person, even someone like myself of average intelligence, is going to make better decisions than a above average an intelligence individual with half of the information. So teaching people all the mechanics, I guess I would say, of how money works, and then helping them build personalized strategies, because everyone's goals are a little bit different, is really something that makes this role fun. It's always like putting a puzzle together and finding out what areas need to be shored up, what understanding needs to be just added to a little bit, and then seeing the lights turn on is the best part for people.
So off of that, what are some simple things or things people should be doing? So I've come across a couple different kinds of people. We got yours that are still working, but there's that fear, their 401k, those kinds of things are struggling. But there's also the people that are not making any money or not making as much, for example, i.e. me. Like, that's why I talked to Nate. It's like, what are just some simple, smart things that people could do today or even long-term, or what do they need to look at if they're so clueless and so full of fear and so scared right now? So go away, Nate. Take it away.
Yeah. So I think, you hit on some different things. So let's talk about first the people who maybe don't have any income coming in, or it's, if it's just unemployment, or it's just some kind of, government support, the little bit of stimulus stuff that kind of came in. Now obviously, it's small. It's not certainly not huge. So, we're all hoping and praying that, things get resolved so we can get back to doing the things we're passionate about, and making money is always more fun than not. But I think, there obviously are more limited options for people who have no money coming in. I think, really when we talk about finances, income is the foundation of everything. If you don't have income, your options are significantly limited. So I think when it comes down to that, just finding ways to, I guess we'll use the term, trim the fat a little bit. I think many people have already started to do this, but realistically, I think it's a good opportunity to go back through. We live in a really heavily subscription-based society, figuring out what are the essentials, what are the non-essentials. The same way that, we only have essential workers out there, going to work right now, is probably the same way you should start to think a little bit about the dollar bills that you have working for you. Which ones are essential going out? Which ones are non-essential going out? Okay. I think it really all comes back to really understanding your budget or your spending plan. I know budget can be kind of a dirty word, so I think the spending plan is a more fun take on it, because it's not a limiting factor. It's allowing you to spend dollars, and you don't have to feel bad about it.
Yeah, not to cut you off, and you correct me if I'm wrong, but I think I just read this the other day that America, we have some of the highest spending, some of the highest income, we're the highest when it comes to just money in all circumstances, but we have the lowest amount of savings. Like, people just don't save or put anything away, right? Like, okay.
Yeah, no, it's totally true. Now, and now this stat's a little bit older than Corona for sure, but what's excessively troubling for me is when you look at the numbers, over half of the American public has less than 25 grand saved, and I mean like including savings and retirement. So it's a really scary place for a lot of people to be, and you couple that with the debt problem in this country. Your average U.S. household has over $16,000 in credit card debt.
Wow.
So
one thing I've been smart about in our house is and if we did it, it was like we knew we had the money to back it. Like right now I'm using points.
Yep.
And I pay it off at the end. What's cool is getting a little flexibility. Or one thing that I've done is, like, for example, for this business, I've had no loans, which is awesome. I got one of those interest-free with points, which is awesome. And then I just made a structured system that by the time before the accrued interest kicked in, that I would make the right amount of payments, but also, and in case I hit any financial hurdles, that I made heavier payments so that it was paid off actually about a month or two. Cause I'm one of those weirdos that like, I don't want that accrued interest. I don't even want to like skin the line. I don't want it on the last month. Like, so if it's a 12 month, I'm doing it in like 10 or 11. So
Well, that makes me weird, Justin. I wish everyone was more weird like you, because I think it's really that's the way I've always approached it myself as well. So I'm glad to hear that, you've got that mindset. I'll touch on this briefly, because I think what's going to happen from this, because people in the circumstance like you're describing, hey, look, we have very little or we have kind of no income, coming to us right now, are probably going to have to lean on credit cards a little bit. So, I would say if you're going to do that, take a look out there. I really struggle saying this because I'm not really an advocate of people taking on more and more lines of credit necessarily, but maybe even consider looking for something that has an introductory 0% interest on it.
They're out there, yeah.
Because if you're gonna, plug all your normal monthly expenditures, minus the income you usually have that you're using to pay that card off at the end of each month in full, hopefully, an average, we're talking 20 to 25% is really normal for a credit card interest rate. That's a really hefty loan that we're taking out on ourselves on a monthly basis. And it's just not sustainable. So
also people with like homes, like if they have home equity, I assume, I don't know much about that. Maybe you can touch on that. I know some people are doing that, or they're trying to refinance interest since interest rates are low. Like you can probably touch on that too. Cause I know I've heard some people like ours is pretty low in our house. We just got a good deal. Ours it was like an introductory for new homeowners. Like ours like 2-3%, but some people it's like 7 or 8 or something crazy. So
I think there are still some of those out there. Those would probably likely be for people who have bought their homes a long time ago at this point. We're talking it's 2020, so more than 10 years ago. Is likely if you're seeing 7 or 8% on a mortgage rate now. I know the interest rates are low. The thing that I struggle with, Justin, too, when recommending anything debt related for people is I really truly believe that people should live as close to a debt-free lifestyle as possible.
Oh, yeah.
So I struggle when I'm sitting here saying, I think you should take on more debt by refinancing that house that you've spent a whole bunch of time trying to pay off.
You're saying,
and the other half of it is really if you're taking another line of credit on your home, you're giving a lot of that control, a lot of that power over to the banks. You hope that they're operating with your best interest, but really it no pun intended there. But at the end of the day, I want people to be in control of their finances. As third-party entities, although they may provide a product or a solution, they're not going to operate in your best interest because it's not really their business to do so.
I love that you said in control because we let so much control us, and that's going to be on a later podcast about how you do one thing is how you do everything. Same thing with fitness, like health. Like if you let certain things control you, it controls you. But you want to be controlling your fitness instead of they dictate, they determine like what you do with your life. So I can totally relate to that. So yeah, but thanks for that, Nate. Yeah. So yeah, we've touched on like, what about people like, so another thing is like, there's people that are still working, still making money, but there's still that initial fear. They're afraid of their 401k. So they're making cutbacks. For example, I've had a couple clients that have put their accounts on hold and worried. They're still getting paid the same. They're still making money, but they're just freaking out about their 401k. What are some things that they could do? And maybe there's nothing they can do. Maybe they just need to get in a better mindset. I don't know. Like, but how can we give them some comfort and bring that fear level down that their life's going to be okay? Or what are some things that they can do or smart choices?
Yeah, I think, let's say we'll play that scenario out. Let's assume that, your pay has not been interrupted. Your company's not doing furloughs or layoffs or anything like that. I think it'd be ignorant to assume that, maybe naive is actually the better word, to assume that there's no possible way that your position could be affected like that in the future. But I think the key really is something we just talked about the other day, Justin, actually. So this is kind of fun that there's crossover here.
Yeah.
You take some time to breathe. I think really, really often we can get into this, and so much of finance is mindset as well. So I really love this crossover here. I hope we get to partner on this stuff more in the future, because I think as I'm talking, there's more and more similarities. But breathing first and understanding that, everyone who made it through 2008, we thought it was the end of the world in 2008. and it is now 2020. So unless this is all a dream, we made it. So I think when we're sitting here in 2020 saying, oh my gosh, we have Corona crash going on right now. And I'm not ignorant to the fact that it is impacting 401ks and retirement accounts. I have so many clients who, have felt a little bit of it. But thankfully we've built things in a way that, they have some resiliency built into it as long as they remain disciplined and breathe. So, the key right now for people who their income has not been affected, but let's say their mindset has been affected by this occurrence in the marketplace. I think you just really need to take stock of where you're at. So one of the things that we really, I'm going to use the term preach because I think we really do. We believe in it that much. Working with clients is before you get into that position where I would say you've earned the right to invest and invest, heavily. You need to make sure that you've got enough cash reserves. The realistic, very comfortable spot for most people to be in normal circumstances is 3 to 6 months. Now, 3 to 6 months of fixed expenses does not mean every single thing that you do all the time, all the entertainment that you go out and do, you need to have that set aside. But I will say, many of my clients are on more
like rent or home, like utilities, the basic necessities that you can't live without.
Correct. Yeah, you're always going to need, we live in Rochester, New York. You're always going to need a roof over your head. You're always going to need the heat. And Lord knows we don't have that many sunny days. So you're going to need the lights on as well.
Well, you have 3 to 6 months, you said, of those basic necessities, then you need to start building that if you're still making income. And if you're not making income, if you can build anything towards it, like, even if it's $25 a month, that can add up. I always like the compounding interest. There's a book I read, but it talked about the penny. Have you heard this story?
Doubling the penny every day.
Yes. The two sons had choices. One was getting $1 million right away and then making whatever choices he wants or whatever. Or the other was, I'll give you a penny that doubles every single day for 30 days.
Yeah.
And for those that don't know the story, I'm going to give a spoiler away. The kid that took the penny won out. He actually had, I think, over $10 million, where the other guy only had $1 million, but he invested so much on what to do with that $1 million that he actually basically was under I don't know, like $50,000. I don't remember their numbers, but he was actually broke and had to file for bankruptcy at the end of it. So long story short, now I wish we had somebody doubling it, but it just shows that's where I started. I started when I was super low income, where I was just adding $25 a month, but then it was cool by the end of the year what that looked like. So then I was like, well, let's do that every single week. And then I've changed it up since then, but it's just when you don't see the money and what you can live within your means, and I've read on this, millionaires aren't because they won the lottery or because they became the CEO or they came up with this amazing app. It was that they built it over time and they actually saved more than they spent. It didn't mean they didn't go on vacation, they didn't enjoy it, but they took advantage of point systems. So that's another thing I'd love to talk about, real quick here, is what are some things, you touched on some really good stuff. If you want to add stuff, go ahead. But what are some things, are there things people can take advantage of right now? I don't know. I've been so busy filling out grants and the loan forgiveness that I wasn't sure if there's some other things out there that maybe people could take advantage of it this time.
Yeah. I mean, if you're talking about kind of your normal, your general population, I think the biggest thing right now is we've all got a greater amount of a certain asset that we typically don't. And that really is time. So beyond all the stimulus stuff, beyond all the programs, beyond all of that stuff, I would really strongly encourage people to take this time right now to just evaluate where they're at. And I think, taking the time to be honest, you don't need to be fearful if something isn't where you want it to be. But I think you need to take just kind of unbiased stock of where you're at. I think that's something that when we spend time with people, believe it or not, a lot of people, they look at the befores and afters and they're like, Nate, this is so dramatic. How did this happen? Even though we aren't really shifting anything massive. We're just making them aware of how this stuff works together. And one tiny little key can open just such a massive amount of information and opportunity for people. So I think understanding, that proper budget, I think right now is tough for people who haven't operated on a spending plan or a budget before because they may not have that same amount of money coming in. So I would say the key really is going to be taking this time, look back at your credit card, your bank statements, see what you have been spending your money on. I usually tell people go back between 3 and 6 months, but 6 months is kind of a lot. So 3 months is probably a good place to start. just getting a solid understanding of what do I typically spend my money on,
Like that.
what things are essential. By the way, this doesn't mean you're not allowed to have any fun. You should have fun. Life is meant to be
No,
lived.
really, but it's also, I'll throw in being a fitness guy. There's a lot of free fun out there. There's a lot
Mhm.
of free fun. And if
For
you're
sure.
in Western New York, if you have not gotten outside yet to explore the mini beauties, there is that. So
Got
definitely.
it.
So
Well,
just
yeah, there's tons of free fun for sure. And I think, that's maybe sometimes misconceptions that you have to spend a lot of money to have a lot of fun. I personally believe, that the relationships, the people you're spending the time with is more important than the money you're spending. But, again,
my kids care more about like the time, and they'd rather like, well, they probably want to go to a Disney World and stuff like that. Some of their best moments from trips that we've taken are like simple, almost really low stuff to like the Adirondacks and gone hiking or
yeah,
whatever, that like those are the things they remember, they talk about, they always want to go back on. And it's been like we've spent some good money. We've gone to Toronto, we've done some pretty cool vacations and stuff, but the ones that they love the most are where we were so engaged with them. And that's why I even think this time right now is looking through a child's eyes. And I've said this over and over again to people, is like, look through this a moment, because a kid will look back on this as the best time, most likely, where
yeah.
we're looking at it totally different. I love some of these tips, man. I go all day. If people want more information, totally get ahead of Nate. So how's some ways people can get a hold of you?
Yeah, so we've got a Facebook page. You can search Hasto and Associates on Facebook. We have obviously, you can feel free to contact, text or call me directly. Justin, feel free to put my number.
Yeah, so he's gonna, just send me that after the show
Yep,
here, and then
absolutely.
I'll add it to the show notes so you guys can look for it there.
Yep, just to kind of give people a little bit of clarity on like how that process looks. If it is something that you'd like a little bit more hands-on assistance, or just have some really specific questions, you'd like to know how it impacts your situation instead of just general rules. We always spend time teaching and listening and understanding what the situation is. Totally complimentary. There's no
Yeah, I
strings.
was gonna say, you do like a free consultation, so it's kind of like I do. So yes, no reason not to at least call him and pick his brain. He's a wealth of knowledge guy, so definitely do that. And since this podcast is called One Step Further, and you've given some great tips, some things that I'm even going to use. But what is like one thing you'd love to leave this with? One tip, one thing. It could be, again, it could be financial, it could be faith, it could be whatever that you would love to get out there that people may not be doing in their lives or currently doing, that they could take a step further.
Yeah, I think we can throw something in there from like a faith base. I think one of the things that really struck me is, like, you go through the Bible and read, is the Bible says that a good man leaves an inheritance for his children's children, and I think that's such a massive impact, because in our society, because we're such a now society, many people, I'm not going to say all, many people are only thinking about, how do I take care of myself tomorrow? So I think when you look at it from a bigger mindset, it really is about how do you make multiple generational impacts. And, that's, I think, the greatest thing that
Legacy is the word I like to leave, but not just for your children, but for your children's children. I love that.
children's children. Yep. So,
That was,
it's really about leaving a legacy.
the Bible calls it. I didn't even know that. And I'll just leave it with this. I'll make mine super simple. If you're like me, fly by the seat of your pants, I'm not quite that much anymore, but I used to be. Like, if you're just still living and you're whatever, if you've never done anything, no matter how you haven't done any financial choices, if you haven't even looked back, I love that tip of his. You haven't even looked back, because it's like, hear no evil, see no evil. If you haven't even looked back on what you're spending, I dare you, I challenge you to at least do that today, because it'll put things in perspective. And then you'll realize, man, it'll weigh your wants against your needs. And so definitely, whatever it is, take one thing that you got from this, if you're not doing anything financially, and do that today. Well, thanks for joining us, Nate. This has been a real pleasure. Again, contact him for free if you have any questions. And as always, thanks for joining us. Remember, like, share, and subscribe. Get it out to there. People could really use this info.